conversations. If we expect children to learn academic content through explicit teaching and practice, why do we sometimes expect them to learn behavior simply because we put it on a poster? So if we expect children to learn academic content through explicit teaching and practice, why do we sometimes expect them to learn behavior simply because it is on a poster? Tonight is night 3 in our 5 series of the Back to School Conversations. A rule on a wall is not a lesson. A rule on a wall is not a lesson. An expectation you announced is not necessarily an expectation you taught. And sometimes what adults call defiance may actually be a child who was never explicitly taught what success looks like. A rule on a wall is not a lesson. An expectation you announced is not necessarily an expectation you taught. And sometimes what us as adults call defiance may actually be a child who was never explicitly taught what success looks like. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to night 3 of Leadership Unscripted, the Back to School Conversation. So tonight, we're going to court. Yes. We're going to court tonight. Not literally, but I'm putting something on trial. Imagine I walk into a mathematics classroom. I put this formula on the board. I tell children, this is important. I expect everybody to use this correctly from today. Then, I never teach it. I never model it. Never practice it. Never check understanding. Never give feedback. Tomorrow, a child uses it incorrectly. And I say, we've been through this. It's right there on the board. You would probably question my teaching correctly. So explain something to me. Why do we sometimes do exactly that with behavior? We put up a beautiful poster. Be respectful. Be responsible. Be ready. Make good choices. Show kindness. Then a 6-year-old doesn't demonstrate what we had in our adult mind. And we say, you know the rules. Do they really know the rule? Or do they know the words? Those are not necessarily the same thing. So tonight's topic is, stop posting rules children were never taught. Court is now in session. I'm sorry I didn't have a gavel tonight. Yes, court is now in session. So teachers, leaders, and parents, you will be the jury tonight. So case number 1, be respectful. The teacher has a classroom rule. Be respectful. Sounds reasonable. A child calls out during a class discussion. The teacher says, that's disrespectful. Another child disagrees with a classmate. You're being disrespectful, the teacher says. Another child doesn't immediately look at the teacher while being corrected. The teacher says, look at me when I'm speaking to you. That's disrespectful. Now here's my question. What exactly does respectful mean? Because adults don't even completely agree. Does respect require eye contact? In every culture, does respect require eye contact in every culture? Does respect require eye contact for every child? Does respectful disagreement means silence? Or can a child respectfully tell an adult, I don't think that's fair? Can a child disagree and still be respectful? Of course. So if our rule is be respectful, we have work to do. We have to operationalize it. What does respect look like? What does respect sound like? What does respect feel like? What does respectful disagreement sound like? What does respectful group work look like? What does respect look like when someone is angry? So here's the truth. Abstract values need concrete teaching. So you cannot just put on your wall, be respectful. That's abstract. Dove says must be explicitly taught. Yes. You cannot just put on your wall, on your chart, be respectful. What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? Children need to know. So that's an abstract statement, be respectful. It needs concrete teaching. And as Dove says, it needs explicit teaching, and not only once. Not only once. You cannot teach that once. So teachers and parents on the live, which word do adults use with children that we sometimes assume children fully understand? Tell me some of the words adults use with children, and we assume they understand what we're talking about. Fix your attitude. We assume poor children, they don't have a clue when we say fix your attitude what we mean. Which are the words adults use with children that we sometimes assume they understand? What about responsibility? What about kindness? What about appropriate? Those are some terms adults, integrity, exactly, integrity. Compassion too. Sometimes we use abstract words to children. They don't really understand it. They don't understand it. Because 10 adults could define those words in 10 different ways, what they mean. So they're open to multiple interpretation. It needs to be taught. So let's establish something important. Rules and routines are not the same thing. What did I say? Rules and routines, they are not the same thing. Rules establish the boundaries. Don't hurt people. Treat others with dignity. Keep your hands to yourself. Keep yourself and others safe. Those are rules. Those matter. But routines answer, how do we do things here? Where do bags go? How do we get materials? What happens when we finish our work? How do we move from whole class instruction to group instruction? What do we do if we need help? How do we use technology? What happens when we need to use the toilet? How do we transition? What does partner talk sound like? What happens when the teacher is working with another group? What should we do? How do we pack up? So children aren't born knowing your classroom routines. And here's something obvious that we sometimes forget. Every teacher's classroom is different. So last year's teacher may have done it one way. You do it another. Home does it another. Another country may do it another way. So when you say you should know this by now, maybe ask yourself, did I actually teach this? Or did I assume that they know? So remember people on the live, rules and routines, they are different. Two different things, they're not the same thing. And sometimes educators think rules and routines are the same thing. They are not. They are not. Routines, rules establish boundaries. Routines tell us how to do something. The routine tells them how to behave, how to put away their things, how to transition from point A to point B, how to move from point A to point B, how to ask for help, how to behave in this classroom. Those are the routines. And you have to teach routines. You can't just assume that they know. You have to teach it. So as teachers, you have to teach the routines. So let's try something. Everybody watching. So imagine you're a leader. Imagine I'm your leader. Imagine I'm your leader. Tomorrow morning I tell you, I expect you to be ready. And that's it. Ready. What does that mean? At your desk at 8 a.m.? Does it mean computer turned on? Does it mean planning complete? Does it mean coffee finished? Smurf says model routines and allow them. Exactly. Model routines and allow them to practice. Does it mean email checked? Does it mean children greeted? What do I mean when I say I expect you to be ready? What does it mean? So you need clarification. So now imagine you're 5. Imagine you're 5 years old. Your teacher says, sit nicely. What does nicely mean? Reception teachers on the live. You tell your children, sit nicely. That 5-year-old child, what does nicely mean? Does it mean feet on the floor? Does sit nicely mean cross-legged? Does sit nicely mean hands still? Does sit nicely mean facing forward? Does sitting nicely means no talking? What does it mean? Then you tell those 6-year-old, walk properly. Or you say, use an indoor voice. That child is wondering, how loud is indoor? Or some people say, make good choice. Which choice? Nikki says, that has no meaning for them unless you model for them what exactly. They must know what you expect. And Jamaica Kids Book says they would have to get the comment is going fast and wild tonight. Jamaica Kids Book says they would have to get the training first beforehand to be able to understand this exactly. And Nikki says she doesn't do that. They need to know when you tell them sit nice, what does sit nicely mean? Exactly. The indoor voice rule is so stressful. My indoor voice may be louder than another. Exactly. What does use your indoor voice mean? What does it mean? What level? And when you tell them to make good choice, which choice? How will they know which choice is good? Is a good choice? Exactly, Jamaica Kids Books. Some of those don't even get it. And this is why effective behavior teaching requires specificity. You must be specific. So children cannot consistently perform an expectation they cannot clearly picture in their mind. Children cannot consistently perform an expectation they cannot clearly picture in their mind. And as Nikki says, vague expectations. So when you tell me to sit nicely, my nicely may be different from your nicely. When you tell me to be respectful, you may be talking to me and I look away. And I'm not saying anything, but in my mind I'm being respectful. But in your mind, you mean being respectful, mean look at the adult who is talking to you, give them your undivided attention. In a child's mind, it may mean once I'm not talking, once I'm not disturbing what you're doing, I don't have to be looking at you, my back will be turned to you. I'm still being respectful because I'm not disturbing you. But that's not what you mean. So you cannot give them vague. And Jamaica, exactly, adults hate specificity. They hate it. They hate it. So as I said before, children cannot consistently perform an expectation they cannot clearly picture. So here's where I want to challenge us tonight. Not every child who fails to follow a routine doesn't understand it. Let's be clear. You're going to have children who test boundaries. Children make choices. Children can knowingly break the rules. So accountability matters. Consequences matter. But before concluding, won't do, strong teachers ask, can they do it? Does the child understand what is expected of him or her? Can the child demonstrate that behavior, the expected behavior? Have they practiced it successfully? Did you practice with them what it looks like? Walk in a straight line. Did you practice with them how to walk in a straight line? And today at school, it was so nice to see. It was the first day of school. And it was so nice to see my teachers walking around with the little 5-year-olds. No, 4-year-old children, practicing them to walk around the campus in a line. Sometimes I was just telling them that when we're going to the bathroom, when you're going to the lunchroom, you walk in a line. The teachers were walking with them around the campus, showing them how to walk. And I've said I saw that to the reception was amazing. Exactly. I saw it today too. They were walking around the campus, and it was so beautiful to see the 4-year-old children walking in a line. And when they step out of the line, you see the teacher correcting them, letting them know this is the acceptable behavior. So that is how you practice the expectation. They need to know. Do they know? Have they practiced it successfully? And then you should ask yourself, is there a skill deficit? Is there a language barrier? Is executive functioning involved? Is the routine developmentally appropriate? Is what you're asking them to do, is it developmentally appropriate? Or can you just say to a 6-year-old or 7-year-old, you must have integrity? Poor child. Poor child. Poor child don't even know what integrity means. So you as the adult need to be explicit and explain to them what integrity is, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like. So think about, is the routine developmentally appropriate? And this is one thing some of us don't think about. Is the environment creating difficulty for the child to demonstrate what we expect? Is the environment creating difficulty for the child? So you may tell a child, when we're on the carpet, you sit with your legs crisscrossed. Is that it? Is that it, Miss Shaw, crisscrossed? And pour the child have some pain in the knee. Or don't fully, the arm is not comfortable. And you expect that poor child to sit and cross legs. So you have to think about, is the child able to do it? Is the environment hindering the child? Is the environment posing a challenge for that child to demonstrate the expected behavior? You have to think about those things. And Jamaica Kids Book says, I have experienced this firsthand. And not because they're smart means they're fully developed in other areas. So true. So true. Some persons do not think about that though. And it's sad, yes, it did. Some people don't think about it. You set the rules, you set the expectation, and you come down so hard on the child for not demonstrating the expected behavior. But have you considered the environment? You said to the child, when I'm in front of the room, all eyes should face forward. But some children have their problem with the attention. Their limited attention span. They're easily distracted. And there's noise outside. How will that child face forward and pay attention? Hmm? How will that child pay attention? You tell the child, when we are reading, you sit quiet with your legs crossed and you're listening and you're looking at the reader. And you know that child has limited attention span and your story is 20 minutes. And you expect that poor child to sit and look at you for 20 minutes. Or the child has ADHD, can't stay one place. And you expect the child to sit for 25 minutes and not move. And it is a sad reality. So in a lot of the classrooms. In a lot of the classrooms. And some children, they're unfairly treated because we expect so much of them and we don't consider the environment. Is the environment appropriate for them to demonstrate all that we're asking? Have I explicitly taught them all that I'm asking them? Did they practice it? So I've asked them to do all these things. Have I provided an opportunity for them to practice it? So good behavior leadership diagnoses before it prescribes. So before you set a rule, before you set an expectation, think about the children in front of you. Will everybody be able to do this? Can you imagine you have a child in a wheelchair in your class? And you come and say, when we're reading, you sit on the carpet with your legs crossed. I didn't consider that child who will be unable to do that. Hmm? Can you imagine that child who will not be able to do that? Or a child who had a previously broken leg and they have screws in their legs and you were not aware of it. And you said everybody must sit with their legs crossed. So there are a lot of things. Before we set those expectations, school is just opening. Before we set those expectations, think about the environment and the conditions in which we will be asking our children to demonstrate understanding of those expectations. You cannot know that a child. You cannot knowingly know that a child has limited attention span. And you're going to be reading for 15-20 minutes and expect that child to sit and look at you and not start fidgeting. So we have to be very careful. So good behavior leadership. Remember, as teachers, you're leaders in your classroom. You're the leader in that classroom. Good behavior leadership, you diagnose before you start prescribe. So before you start telling children to keep hands and feet to themselves, will Johnny be able to do that? Is Johnny hyperactive? Is there something going on with Johnny that will hinder Johnny from understanding what you're saying? Have you allowed enough time to practice, for them to practice, before you start holding a hard fist to say, this is what we expect in this room? So remember, when you're setting the rules, when you're setting the expectations, think about who you're expecting it, who will be showing you these expectations. will they be able to demonstrate all that you're asking? Or will have to be some exceptions based on the context, based on the story behind each child? And that's why last night I said to you guys, you need to use the time to get to know those children in front of you. So here's court case number 2. Remember, we're in court tonight. Here's court case number 2. It's the second week of school. A year 4 teacher is very frustrated. Every time mathematics finishes and children transition to literacy, it's chaos. The children talk. Some wander around. 2 children start sharpening pencils. Some goes to the toilet. Books take forever to be distributed. The transition takes 7 minutes. The teacher repeatedly says, "Come on, you know what you're supposed to be doing. Come on, come on." The teacher keeps saying that. Friday arrives. The teacher announces, from Monday, anyone who isn't ready within 2 minutes will lose 5 minutes of break. No, you're the jury. What's your verdict? Is it A, is it fair? Children need consequences. Is it B, is it unfair? Never remove break. Is it C, before adding consequences, explicitly teach and practice the transition? Or is it D, depends on whether the routine was previously taught? What is your response there? You'll be the jury now. The teacher just announced, from Monday, anyone who isn't ready within 2 minutes will lose 5 minutes of their break. Is that fair? You'll be the jury. Tell me, what's your verdict? So I'm seeing D, depends on whether the routine was previously taught. Anybody else? Is that statement fair? Alana says C. I'm seeing C. So with D or C. Let me hear from anybody else. But D better, it's more of how I see things. Okay. So here's what I would want to know before I select an answer. What exactly was taught? So say for instance, the teacher claimed that the expectation was taught. What exactly was taught? Definitely teach the transition and practice for a while so students get it. Exactly, Smurf. But I'm going to be asking myself, what exactly was taught? How was it taught? Did the teacher model the transition? Smurf said it. Did children practice it? Was the sequence broken into steps? Was there a clear cue? Do children know where materials go? Is there someone assigned to distribute the books? What happened to unfinished work? When can someone sharpen a pencil? What does ready actually look like? Alana says second week is not enough time. Was the routine practiced when nobody was under academic pressure? If not, the first intervention might not be punishment. It might be teaching. And as Alana says, second week is not enough. Smurf says earlier, they need to practice routines. So the teacher says, we're going to practice our mathematics to literacy transition. Step 1, when you hear the cue, stop and listen. Step 2, close mathematics materials. Step 3, one designated person per table return resources. Step 4, take out literacy materials. Step 5, begin the starter displayed on the board. Now model it. Maybe model it badly too. Ask, what did you notice? Children will identify the errors, then model it correctly. Allow children to practice. Time it. Not to shame them, but to build fluency in the transition. Stop, give them feedback. Then you practice again. Celebrate every time they improve. The next day, you revisit it. That's how you teach routine. So if we can rehearse multiplication facts to build automaticity, we can rehearse routines to build independence. So if we can rehearse multiplication facts to build automaticity, we can rehearse routines to build independence. And that's a fact. Blessed children need to see it, practice it, make mistakes, receive reminders, and practice it again. And a lot of teachers, because we don't have enough patience, or we are rushing to move on to the next activity, we forget that. We forget that. And get what happened? We frustrate ourselves for the entire year. We frustrate ourselves for the entire year. Frustrate ourselves for the entire year. Argue and blame the poor innocent children for the entire year, when the solution was simple. You didn't take enough time to practice, to build fluency in whatever you expect of them. So even that, I'm gonna come with the research to back up what I'm saying. So there is substantial evidence based around effective classroom management showing the importance of clearly teaching the expected behavior, establishing predictable routines, actively supervising, acknowledging appropriate behavior, and responding consistently when expectations aren't met. And there's a practical reason this matters. Routines protect instructional time. So when you're teaching, sometimes you will hear people say a lot of instructional time was wasted. All they're saying is that your routines aren't smooth enough. Your routines lack fluency. Children don't know how to transition from one part of the lesson to the next. So you waste teaching time correcting children, telling children what to do, telling who to go over there, who to go for the book, who to sit straight, who to do this. You spend a lot of teaching time correcting behavior. And that's why sometimes people tell you instructional time was wasted in that lesson. And it's going to happen if you don't practice the routines. And Dav says sometimes it frustrates the children. Sometimes it frustrates the children. And it frustrates you as the adult too. It frustrates you as the adult too. So routines protect instructional time. So imagine losing 5 minutes during every major transition. 5 minutes doesn't sound significant. But let's multiply it. Several transitions per day. 5 days per week. Dozens of school weeks. That becomes hours of learning. So strong routines aren't about teachers controlling children for the sake of control. No. Strong routines are about creating predictability and independence, so more cognitive energy can be directed toward learning. Now so you spend less time telling children where to get the materials, what to do, which group they must go, how to move from one section of the lesson to the next, how to transition from one subject to the next. You spend less time doing that. So more cognitive energy can be directed towards teaching and learning. And Smurf says, I believe kids adapt to rules and routines when they have a voice in creating or critiquing it. And that's another big point, Smurf. Especially if they don't have a voice. And that means they will definitely not understand it. So well-established routine tells the child, I know what happens next. That's a well-established routine. When you can ask a child, when our math lesson end, what comes next? And now we can see if children is independent in transitioning. When you end one session or when you're transitioning from one period to the next. When children automatically know what to do without you telling them. That's how you know your routines are embedded in the classroom practice. So that predictability can be especially helpful for younger learners and for many children who benefit from clear structure. So I want to give teachers something extremely simple tonight. Every night I come with some models for you to take away and try in your classroom. So I want to give you something. I want to make it simple tonight. No complicated framework tonight. None. So you can take any routine and use 4 moves. You're going to model, practice, notice, reteach. And I think Bless said it already. Model, practice, notice, reteach. Model, practice, notice, reteach. So in modeling, don't merely explain it. Show children what to expect. What does entering the classroom look like? What does partner talk sound like? See, Alicia, I'm agreeing with Smurf. What does asking for help look like? So you can even model the wrong way and ask children to identify the problem. But while that is a suggested strategy for you to model how it is done the wrong way, I personally don't believe in it. I don't believe as adults, if we know better, we're going to model things that is not acceptable for children to identify what's wrong. No, I don't believe in that. I believe in always showing them, model for them the expected standard, what you expect, and have them mimic it. I don't believe in modeling negative behavior or negative scenarios just to teach a lesson. I don't believe in that. Unless somebody in the classroom does it and you can use it as an example to correct and redirect. I don't believe adults should come up with fictitious scenarios just to demonstrate a negative behavior. I don't believe in it. You model what is expected. And when children deviate, you explain and you correct. That's my personal belief. So after you model, you practice. Do it when the stakes are low. Don't wait for the real transition and hope everybody remembers. No. Rehearse it. Rehearse it. Children practice phonics. They practice sport. They practice music. Behavioral routines deserve practice too. Your classroom routines deserve practice too. And then we move on to notice. Catch success. Not empty praise. Not saying good job. Be specific. I noticed that when the signal sounded, the table stopped, put materials away, and was ready within 1 minute. That's exactly the routine we practiced. So when you're praising children, good job and excellent job, good boy, good girl, awesome. What does that mean? What awesome mean? What good job mean? You ever hear the child, I think it was a TikTok video, and the parent was asking the child to do its good work, to do her work. And the child said, I'm tired of hearing good job. Same thing. What does good job look like? What does good job look like? Alana said, I'm tired of those phrases. Exactly. Nice work. Awesome. What exactly are we communicating? What are we communicating? You have to be specific. You must be specific. So if you've practiced a routine and you see a group demonstrated it effectively, instead of saying good job, you simply say, I noticed that when that group heard the signal, the table stopped, they put away their materials, and they were ready within 1 minute. That's exactly the routine we expect. So children know exactly what they did and what you're praising them for. Because there may be Johnny over there in the corner who didn't do what was expected and didn't remember what you expect of him. But when you reinforce it by highlighting the good practice you just saw, you're kind of reinforcing it for Johnny too. Johnny said, oh, this is where I went wrong. And that allows children to know what worked and what didn't work. And then you reteach. This one matters enormously. So after Christmas break, reteach. After a long weekend, if necessary, revisit. When a routine begins deteriorating, don't simply become louder as a teacher. Reteach. So because great teachers don't say, I already taught that in September. No. Imagine saying that about fractions. I taught fractions once. If they don't understand it now, that's their problem. No, you can't say that. We revisit important learning. Behavior is no different. Our classroom expectation, routines is no different. Same way you reteach certain academic concepts. The same way you practice sports. The same way you allow them to do things over and over. The same thing for behavior and classroom routines. So now let me challenge the other extreme. Good routines do not mean children become robots. Remember that. Good routines do not mean children become robots. We're teaching human beings, remember that. So children need to talk, they need to move, they need to laugh, they need to ask questions, they need to explore, they need to make mistakes. They need to develop independence, they need to learn how to make decisions for themselves. So a classroom where children are terrified of getting a routine wrong may look beautifully controlled and still be an unhealthy learning environment. So I'm not asking you to create an environment where children are so terrified of getting anything wrong. And while some of them may walk past your classroom and say, oh, they're so orderly and sitting quietly, that may still be an unhealthy learning environment for children. Because if children cannot talk, if they can't move around, if they can't laugh, if they don't feel motivated enough to ask questions, to explore, to make mistakes, that's not a healthy learning environment. So you must know where to strike the balance. You have to know. You have to know where to strike the balance. So compliance isn't the ultimate goal. Remember that. Compliance isn't the ultimate goal. Self-regulation is. Independence is. Community is. So we don't want children who behave appropriately only because the teacher is standing there. No. We want children who gradually understand, why does this routine help our community? How does my behavior affect other people's learning? What do I do when I'm frustrated? How do I repair harm? That's deeper than compliance. That's what we call development. And our job is to develop children. Bless says, don't expect young children to sit perfectly still for long periods. So if you're a parent and a live parents, schools need your partnership here. Because sometimes a child goes home and says, my teacher has too many rules. You must listen, ask questions, but also help children understand that different environments have different expectations. Home has routines, workplaces have routines, airports have routines, sports teams have routines. Schools need them too. But parents can also reasonably ask schools, are expectations clear? Are they developmentally appropriate? Are they consistently applied? Are children taught what success looks like and feel like? Are consequences proportionate? And importantly, does the school distinguish between a child learning a routine and a child deliberately refusing a known expectation? That's an intelligent behavior conversation. Schools need to know the difference when a child is just testing boundaries or when they're just practicing and just doesn't get it right as yet. So this is absolutely a teaching and learning leadership issue. So in the book, The Teaching and Learning Leader, every night I come with my book and I won't stop because I have many lessons in there. So in this book, The Teaching and Learning Leader, one of the broader principles is that leaders have to explain the conditions surrounding effective teaching. So leaders have to explain classroom climate, what it looks like. Have to explain that routine matters, transition matters, Learning time matters. Consistency matters. So when school leaders visit classrooms, don't only examine the academic task. You're going to be watching for how do children enter this classroom? How quickly does learning begin? What happens during transitions? Can children access resources independently? What happens when the teacher begins working with a small group? Do children understand expectations? And here is an important leadership question. Have we created school-wide consistency where it helps children, or 20 completely different systems children have to decode? So there are a whole school expectation about what is the expectation, or everybody's doing their own thing. So we confuse children. So not everything needs to be standardized, but some shared expectations can create predictability across the school. So the same way we're asking, leaders are asking teachers leaders are explaining to teachers what is expected of them when they're teaching. In the same way, you have to explain and explicitly explain to your children and provide opportunities for them to practice what is expected of them during transition, as they move and operate within the learning space. They must know and they must practice it. So let's finish behavior court. If I could remove one sentence from classroom tomorrow, it might be, you know better. If I could stop teachers from using one sentence, is that sentence, you know better. Sometimes they do, of course. Sometimes they do. And when they do, accountability matters. But sometimes we haven't actually checked. So replace the automatic assumption with a question. So what does this child need in order to do better next time? Maybe a consequence. Maybe they need practice. Maybe all they need is a reminder. Maybe you need to provide a visual cue. Maybe you need to have a conversation with that child. Maybe you need to change the environment. Maybe that child needs additional support. Or maybe you need to establish some boundaries. Or maybe you need to reteach the expectations. So your professional judgment determines which is more applicable. And that's why behavior management cannot simply become a list of punishments attached to a list of rules. Behavior management is teaching. It is teaching. Spirit said they need to see how it can be applied. Routines can, exactly. So I want everybody voting before we leave. Here's a statement. I want all of us voting before we leave tonight. Here's a statement. If a child repeatedly fails to meet an expectation, adults should first ask whether the expectation has been explicitly taught, understood and practiced before assuming deliberate defiance. Is that true? Do you agree or disagree? If a child repeatedly fails to meet an expectation, adults should first ask whether the expectation has been explicitly taught, if the child understands it, and practice it before assuming the child is deliberately being defiant. Do you agree or disagree? Let me hear from you. Let us vote. That says agree. So before we start assuming, let me hear from somebody else. Yes, so everybody's agreeing. So before we start assuming that the child is just being defiant, we need to understand, was that expectation explicitly taught? And even if it was explicitly taught, did the child understand it? Are there multiple interpretations? Was the teacher consistent with it? Did I allow that child to practice what is expected? So before assuming defiance, ask those questions. So I want to leave educators preparing for school, for the school year with this. You can spend hours creating your classroom rules posters. Hours. You can use beautiful fonts, perfect colors, laminating it, hang it perfectly, prominently, big and bold. But remember, lamination is not instruction. Beautiful font is not instruction. Factory-made charts with pretty colors, fancy themes, that's not instruction. Children don't learn expectations through osmosis. You have to teach them, you have to model for them, and you have to practice with them. So notice when they're successful, correct when necessary, reteach when needed, and hold children accountable after we've done our part to make the expectation clear. So it's not about going over everything for the entire year. No. After we've done our part to make the expectation clear, we are going to hold them accountable. Because perhaps one of the most important shifts we can make this year is moving from I told you to I taught you. What did I say? One of the best decisions we can make this year is moving from I told you to I taught you. Those are not the same thing. So tomorrow night on Leadership Unscripted, the back to school conversation, we're going to be discussing kind teachers need boundaries too. So as teachers, so we're talking teachers, parents, WhatsApp messages after our conversations, saying no, emotional availability, leadership expectations, and whether being a caring educator somehow became confused with being available 24/7. That one is going to be an interesting conversation. So until tomorrow night at 8:30, walk good. Walk good. Alana says Jesus. Alana says Jesus. It's true, sometimes you're nice. And because you're nice and you're caring, being a caring educator does not mean and should not be confused with being available 24/7. And that needs to be understood by leadership, by your colleagues, by students, by parents. So I'm not leaving out anybody. So kind teachers, caring teachers need boundaries too. That's our conversation tomorrow night on the back to school conversation. Have a blessed night. See you tomorrow. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Thank you to everyone who is here every night with me. I'm honored and I don't take your company lightly. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being here and I appreciate your comment. The live will be posted on my YouTube channel, Dr. R. Dale. It will also, the snippet from the live will also be posted on this TikTok channel. So when you see the different clippings, the different shorts from tonight's live, please like it and please leave a comment. So others who missed the live will see what you have learned. So please, under the different videos, share some things, share some of the things, share some of the lessons that you would have learned, or some of the things that I would have reinforced, that you knew already, but they were reinforced on the live. Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. And remember to share my videos, like my videos, tag my videos. That is how we get people, that is how we get traffic onto this platform. Have a wonderful night. I'm now going to drink my ginger tea. Thank you very much.